to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome. This meeting is being televised by Chelmsford TeleMedia. If there's anyone present who is planning to record, please indicate at this time. No. All right, good. First item on our agenda is consent agenda for the regular school meeting of December 5th. I'll entertain a motion.
I wasn't here for the whole thing, guys, so.
I'm abstaining as well.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda from December 5th, 2017.
Second.
Okay. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
One abstention. Okay.
Can I just mention one thing real quickly?
Sure.
Sharon Giglio is not with us tonight. She's taking the minutes remotely, but she's not here in the room tonight, just in case you were looking for her.
She's taking the minutes remotely. Wow.
Technology.
Just done it before.
You think I could stay home?
Yeah, we'll avatar you in.
More participation.
Good for her.
Okay, before we get into the rest of the agenda, Mr. Moses has requested to make a statement.
Yeah, so I wanted to take a few minutes to publicly apologize. My behavior the other day was pretty uncharacteristic of me. I like to keep my cool. But I would like to specifically apologize to Mr. Al Thomas, the chairman. So to be spoken over by a junior member of the board is not acceptable, and your position deserves much more respect than I gave you that night. Emotions really run high in some of these discussions, and some of those things that happened over the previous days I took very personally, and I shouldn't. I should really be able to separate myself and be a little more professional in how I present solutions to those. But that being said, I do believe that all children in this district are entitled to an education, and I will continue to work hard to make sure that they all do, and work hard for the rest of the district. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, Mr. Lopoli has requested to make a statement.
So first of all, I too want to apologize to you, Al. I wasn't here the other night and a couple of weeks ago, and I really feel if I was here, I don't think it would have escalated to that point, and I'll tell you why. Not because I think my presence on the board would have changed things, but I want to tell you about Steve McCormick. Steve McCormick is a very dear friend of mine, and if I was here, I really felt that our relationship could have prevented something that is very, very personal. And I think that's what the problem is in our town right now. You see, this is becoming to a point, a real tipping point, because it's personal, right? The greatest asset in our town is our children. So when people come to the podium, there's a real personal issue. It's not about taxes, it's not about your potholes, it's about our kids. So when Steve, my dear friend, came to the podium, I will tell you this, because I spoke to him 48 hours after the fact. He was in my office and we had this discussion. Steve McCormick is one of the most respected individuals in this town. I coached with Steve McCormick. He became the vice president of Papuana when I stepped down as the president of Papuana. This is a gentleman who coaches our children, donates to our town, active community member. But when Steve McCormick came here, it was not in reflection to support any particular group. Wasn't here to support the unions, wasn't here to support the school committee. It was here to talk about his son, who was in Jen Salmon's class, and his niece, who was in the class that we're talking about that had some challenges. So Steve came here, and before you know it, something kind of bubbled over. And what was perceived by my good friend John Moses as potentially maybe a comment that wasn't taken in with respect had nothing to do with Steve McCormick. So Steve thought it was meant to him, and that's why he got a little aggressive. Passionate. People confuse those two. But I will tell you this about my friend John Moses, and I want everybody to know. Sure, Johnny Moses got passionate, and Johnny Moses probably did things that we're all guilty of, raising our voice or fighting for children, maybe raising our voice at the wrong time. But this is what Steve didn't know about Johnny Moses. You see, John is a veteran of Afghanistan, and literally, John was over there when the bombs were flying over his head. Buildings were shaking when John was over there. So, John, I get what you were doing, and I appreciate what you were doing, but I don't think people really understand, the type of individual you are. I'm disappointed that there are individuals in this town trying to create some kind of a recall for you. If we're going to have a recall because a member of some board in this town raised their voice or yelled or did something, then I think we got a big problem, because we're going to spend $50,000 of the taxpayers' money for a recall. Why don't they just vote you out the next time? I'll support you if you want to run again. But I think there's a bigger problem. You see, what's being lost is exactly why I ran. One of the biggest things from the previous superintendent and why I got in the race is because all I heard was transparency. Our public didn't have the right transparency. I'm going to tell you right now, there's no transparency taking place right now, because our public doesn't understand really what took place. First of all, let me tell you, our union president is a wonderful teacher, well-respected, and loved by her class. But that's not the issue we're talking about. Because somehow, I'm going to explain to you what got lost in translation. You see, the day before Thanksgiving, the American Federation of Teachers representative, who doesn't live in our town, he doesn't work for the administration, he doesn't work for Paul Cohen, he doesn't take orders from Jay Lang, and he certainly doesn't take orders from any of the teachers in our community. He came to our school after he was told not to come. Eric Blanchette was told not to come to the school. He has no business being on hallowed ground. He was invited at some point, I don't know how, that's why there was an investigation. At 8:30 in the morning, he buzzed the door and he was let in. Now, the proper protocol for even myself as a school committee member is I ask permission from the superintendent to go to a school. I get buzzed in, I go right to the office, I sign and show ID. And at that point, either the teacher comes down or the principal comes out. That is the protocol. We have protocols, it's called safety. One of the biggest things we talked about. This gentleman that nobody in the town realizes, other than the people affiliated with the union, decided on his own that he was going to go to the building after he was told not to come. He was let into the building. He didn't go to the town office, the principal's office. He went right to the union president's classroom. Now, she deserves to be there. She's our teacher. He's not, though. So Mr. Blanchette, along with the president, came down to the principal's office, and I'm going to tell you what transpired. An assault took place. That's what this is about. Excuse me? An assault took place. A real assault. It was so bad that this principal...
You can
He
talk.
was not there.
What's that?
He was not there.
You're right, because I spoke to the chief of police.
He
So-
wasn't there either.
Well,
Just let him finish, and then you can say
I am
anything you...
talking.
Hold it, right now, Sal. You can say anything you want when he's finished. And anyone else in the committee, I'm granting a privilege, because it's not an agenda item, for these two gentlemen to speak. I would give the same privilege to any other member of the committee, because everyone puts in a lot of time and deserves to get their 2 cents. If you want to say something after and rebut, that's perfectly all right. But right now, Sal's going to finish his thing.
I was not there, but I did speak to the individuals that are affiliated with this, because we're not supposed to be there, because the school committee is not in charge of running schools. So this is what happened. This individual, Eric Blanchette, came to your schools where your children are. He went into the school, he didn't check in, he went right to the classroom. They came down from the classroom and approached the principal. The principal said, I'm not having a meeting, we are not discussing the situation, and we won't talk about why. It's got nothing to do with it. This individual then followed the principal into her office. The principal got nervous. She's an older woman. She left her phone on the table and left and asked the secretary, please call Jay. This is a very uncomfortable situation. The principal's phone rang. It was Jay Lang. This individual, Eric, picked up the phone and said, the principal's on the phone, the superintendent's on the phone. Tell the principal to come back and answer it. The secretary said, can we have the phone? He then said, no, tell her to come get it. She didn't do that. The teachers took the principal that was visibly shaken to a classroom. At that point, Jay Lang called the police and he headed down. He came into the school. He identified the situation. He went to the principal. Do you know at that point that this came right from the superintendent, so if we want to impugn his reputation, do you know that this gentleman, Eric, who doesn't belong to this community, then followed the superintendent out? Do you know the superintendent actually said, please stop touching me? He placed his hands on his body. He wanted to, hey, wait a minute, listen to me. This isn't a teacher. This is the American Federation Teachers Union representative that lives in Haverhill, Massachusetts, from what I understand. It got so bad that the police came down. It got so violent that the police chief said to me, Sal, if I was there, I would have arrested that individual for disruption of a classroom, which is against the law. So this is the point we're trying to make. This is the point I'd like to ask for. We cannot have these officials coming into our school unannounced without signing in and walking around our classes. We certainly can't have union officials.
I'm just going to back it up a little bit. You're super distorted.
Sal, can you start to wrap it up, please?
We can't certainly have union officials doing what they please. Jen Salmon's the union president, and that's a whole different conversation. But Al, I want to apologize because what took place was this. Al Thomas, who's been in this community for 50 years, has more experience in education than anybody in this room, was not only called a liar, but he was told he doesn't care about kids by the audience. That in itself is an absolute terrible example that we set in the kids. I'm going to give you another terrible example. That same night, one of the most beloved gentlemen in our community, which is our principal, Steve Murray, walked into a restaurant. When he walked in, he was actually booed by a group of representatives that was in the audience that night. Booed. You know how I know? Because my friend that was in the audience called me up. He was with his wife and children. And he said, I just watched Steve Murray get booed. What the heck is going on with the schools? So I sit here and I watch deans, teachers, students talk about bullying, talk about respect, but my principal walks into a restaurant and he's booed in public. Who do I see about this? I'm 1/20th of this board. I want to know, who do I hold responsible for their character, their actions? Who do I hold responsible for a person that had to be taken out of our schools by the police? Does anybody want to tell me that an accident couldn't have occurred? Does anybody want to promise me that they've never heard of an incident in a school with someone coming in without permission doing something wrong? The schools are hallowed ground. The kids are the greatest assets. That's why we're on this board. And for people to come and go as they please is unacceptable. He is not a teacher. He is not our union president. He is not administration. He was a stranger that came in. That's how this started. That's where this went. It had nothing to do with the union president. The union president, as a result of this individual, dragged her into the mud. Mr. Chairman, I'm telling you right now, Mr. Superintendent, I'm asking right now, I want Eric Blanchette, the AFT union representative, I want him barred from our schools. I don't want an individual walking around our schools that can come and go as he pleases. He didn't follow protocol. He's not supposed to be there. He was told not to be there, but what happened? He did what he pleased. So that means everybody in Massachusetts, everybody in Chelmsford can come and go as they please in your schools and our schools with our kids. Is that what we have right now? Once again, this has nothing to do with our union president. This has to do with their representative dragged her into the mud, and as a result, she was suspended. Why? Who do we see? How did he get in this building? So, Al, I apologize. Johnny, I apologize. Steve McCormick, I apologize. You're going to fall in love with Steve McCormick because you know what he said to me tonight? Tell John Moses I apologize. I had nothing to do with the unions. It was about my son and about my niece, and I'd love to have a cup of coffee and a slice of pizza with him at your place. So I extended to him. He's a first-class guy. But I will tell you this. I apologize to the whole community because what is happening right now is shredding your community. When a principal of our school gets booed by representatives of our school, you have a serious problem. We're supposed to be teaching our kids what the right thing to do is, and a collection, because it's not just one person's fault, a collection of people are creating something that I've never seen in my life before. So I apologize. Tell me what to do to make this better. Tell me how to fix this. And please, don't tell me that the people in here that volunteer their time are at fault. Because the last time I looked, you ran unopposed, you ran unopposed, Barbara ran unopposed, Al ran unopposed. Of course, I have to get in a fist fight with one of our greatest assets, and Anina Tanini, and it was awful, but that's not the point. But I just want to say this. I mean, I don't see anybody else stepping up to the plate and donating their time and energy. So it's not fair to accuse people on this board, and I apologize that I had to leave early. I'm passionate about this. I'll talk about this every single week if I have to. Something's got to stop. Something's got to change. I'm not a social media guy. I don't go on it. If you got a problem with me, come right to the bench right over here and look me in the face and tell me the problem. Don't go on social media. Come in here and tell me what the problem is so we can work on it together. So with that, I took way too much time. I apologize. But I'm just as passionate as I am right now as the people that were in this room 2 weeks ago that also voiced their concern. So I'm sorry where we are today. You happen to be right now one of the laughing stocks of the entire Merrimack Valley. Our teachers, our superintendent, our boards, our town, we're being laughed at by other communities because they've never seen anything like this before. At what point will this stop? Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I apologize for taking too much time.
Thank you. The only comment I'd like to make at this time is that these two gentlemen asked for an opportunity to speak. I granted it. I had no idea what the content was or anything else. So if anybody thinks there's a plot here with the chair and these gentlemen expressing opinions, I didn't know what they're going to talk about. Would any other member of the committee like to have a moment at this time or not? Not? Okay. It's time for public comments. I'd rather not go through the formal statement that I made last week, but would you please give your name and address and limit your time to a brief amount because we have a big agenda that we need to get through. Other than that, I'd like to hear anybody that'd like to talk.
Good evening. My name's Jeff Parks. I live at 8 Pilgrim Road, and I'm the principal at the Parker Middle School. I have two things I'd like to share. First, I'd like to be very clear that we, the principals sitting behind me, as well as Principal Tobin, who was not able to make it tonight, we're here tonight because we want to be here. We weren't asked to be here. We weren't required to be here. We want to be here. I only mention this because following the last meeting that some of us attended, some people were led to believe that Dr. Lang asked us or required us to come, which is simply not true. We're here tonight because we want to be, just as we were last time. The second thing I'd like to clarify is that it was brought to our attention following the recent union meetings last week that the membership is being led to believe that we don't feel supported by Dr. Lang, we meaning the principals. Once again, completely inaccurate. Since he joined our district, we've made great gains. We look forward to a promising future with him as our superintendent. We're also fortunate to have talented, caring, dedicated teachers in each and every one of our schools. And those teachers also have our support and our appreciation. We look forward to a time when we can work together and spend our energy and attention on building the future for our students and our children. We look forward to not spending any more of our time defending ourselves from ongoing personal attacks. Dr. Lang has given us his support time and time again, and we're here tonight to let him know, to let the school committee know, and anybody else who's following this, to be very clear, he has our complete confidence and our support. We've benefited from his knowledge, his experience. We value his guidance and his input, and as our leader, we especially appreciate his professionalism. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would someone else like to speak at this time?
My name is Maria Santos, and I live at 19 Parkhurst Road in Chelmsford. I wrote to Dr. Lang and to Mr. Thomas after last week's meeting because I'm sitting in my kitchen and my children are coming into the room and cheering on and saying this is better than a movie, Mom. And I think that that's just not appropriate and doesn't set a good example. I also want to caution people that there is some kind of case going on, so the actual facts will come out at some point. And there's two sides to everything, and as an attorney, I know that pretty well. So I think we have to be cautious about those things. I would appreciate it if everybody kept in mind that the most important thing in this town is the children. When my children were in first grade, we had exactly the same situation, I believe, because I don't know all the facts of this, happen. A young lady in the classroom had not been assessed, or they didn't know what was wrong with her, but she was throwing things at the teacher, and one of those things landed in my child's head. And the principal kindly called me. I went in the next day, and over the next 60 days, she was assigned an assistant in the classroom, and they made it through that year, but the children were scared. It's not an easy thing for anybody to deal with, especially the teacher. The teacher is stuck in a situation where she can or he cannot hit back, cannot do anything against that child, and they have to face the consequences for the rest of the children. So when one of your own children gets impacted, you have to come and you have to support them, and you have to do the best that you can so that everybody gets a good education. And I understand that. But I think it's something that can be worked internally. And I hope it gets to that and parents see that as that they have a way to resolve it without it getting to this point. I wonder if the school committee, if Dr. Lang can recommend ways that we as parents in the Council of Schools or through our PTOs or in any way better educate on processes and things that we need to do, and then just making sure that those processes are followed so that then we don't get it to this point. Things become an emergency when they shouldn't be. We were going in the right direction. I'd like us to go back to that direction. So I'm going to take a moment to just say to you all and whoever's listening out there, I know personally my family has had an incredible experience through our system. My children have learned tremendously, and we've met some incredible teachers and administrators along the way. I think that this can happen again, and we can continue to go forward. There shouldn't go backward. We don't need to revisit this all the time. We need to definitely move forward, and that's what I'm going to urge everybody to consider doing. But public access is also very important, and last week we didn't know all the rules as parents and as people who believe deeply in this system, and we were not allowed in. I was out there, it was raining, all of those wonderful things, so that's why I sat in the kitchen and watched as my children watched next door. I want to thank you. I know that serving on any public forum like this is a very difficult thing to do. But I'm going to also ask you to please consider having a policy that anybody serving on a public board not go into social media. It just is not a full disclosure of everything that's going on. It's very difficult, and I think a lot of children follow the example of what adults do. And here we are having speakers come in, talking to them and to parents about the difficulties of social media and how it can even lead to suicide. So why even, why do it? Consider really putting some limit on what the social media access is on any issue to do with a public board, including this one. Thank you. I appreciate your consideration. Wish everybody happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make one wonderful comment of what you had to say.
Okay.
First of all, I appreciate what you said. It was thoughtful, and it was right down the middle. As the vice chair of this board, I'm going to convey your sentiments of staying off of social media. As a member of this community with a loud voice, and I say that in a positive way, could you maybe do the same thing to the PTOs and the people that you represent as it relates to social media, of casting dispersions or attacks on people that have been in this community and teaching our kids for, in some instances, 50 and 60 years? Would you help us?
Okay, so I will tell you that on any PTO board where I have served, and I was president of the Center School PTO for well over three and a half years about, and currently of the McCarthy PTO, close to 4 years. We have a closed Facebook page. It is limited to whoever is a member of the school at that point, and thus a PTO person. We have access only through either the president or another person or another person on the board. So we review very carefully what's posted, and we don't incite that. Those are the boards I'm on. I will be glad to bring this up to the Council of Schools. I know that every PTO board member considers very carefully the social media, things that are actually PTO run. So in other words, PTO is a funny business because just like for you, it's a funny business. You're a parent maybe in this system. You may also, but you're an elected official. We are not elected officials of a school or town type of board, but we are linked to the schools. And so in that way, we're very careful. I know that I am, and I know that there are quite a few presidents who are, on what we allow as social media. And the reason we have our Facebook page for McCarthy is because we need to put out information. It is the only reason that we try to have it and not to incite comments. So I think you have to have a policy in place. I'd be glad to adopt one for all the PTOs. If we could do that, that would be great.
It's evident that the PTOs will serve an example to the entire community because you have direct access with the parents that don't belong to understand what you're.
No, all parents belong to a PTO
That
if
maybe
they're in
don't.
the school system.
Yeah, if they don't have a child in the school system. They could be a parent and not have a child in the school system.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I'd like to commend you on leadership. Leadership matters.
Thanks.
And we're looking for leadership right now. We're looking for people to step up, and in spite of what people think or what is being told to them, to be individuals and be leaders. Leadership matters, and thank you very much for being a leader in our community.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I do appreciate the board as well, so thank you very much. I know what it takes to serve, so thank you to all of you.
Thanks again. Would anyone else like to address the committee at this time?
That's a good-looking suit. That's a good-looking suit.
Rented. Sorry. Steve Murray, 17 Clover Hill Drive. I'm here as a resident. I'm also here as a parent of a student in the system and the high school principal. After I saw the selectmen's meeting last year regarding the heating concerns, I was shocked to see how the meeting deteriorated into shouting, fights, and personal attacks. I truly believe the incident was an aberration and that cooler heads would prevail in future disagreements. After witnessing December 5th school committee meeting and the people in the audience and people speaking, I now fear that's the norm. For 18 years, I worked with middle school children, and we talked about conflict resolution. And in every incident, we would ask the same two questions. The first one is, does this issue involve you directly? If the answer was no, we'd always tell the students, then don't get involved, do not say anything, and certainly do not do anything on social media. If the answer was yes, and they were involved, we would always ask the follow-up question. What you want to say or what you want to do, is it going to make the situation better or worse? At the last school committee meeting, it was far worse than the heating meeting that we had last year. Fingers were pointed, people were called names, personal attacks were thrown, people pounded on the windows outside here of the window, and the speaking parameters were willfully ignored, which all ultimately ended in the room being cleared. It's hard to maintain the moral high ground with children when the adults in their lives are not practicing appropriate conflict resolution. Parents, administrators, and educators would never allow children to address each other in this manner. or to ignore the established rules of civility regardless of the venue. Although the meeting was located here, the ramifications of the actions from the people in the audience and the people speaking are far greater. It will certainly affect voters and whether they want to support district or school initiatives. It will certainly affect families whether they want to move into town or businesses where they want to move into town. It will certainly affect folks who want to take their time and volunteer to become elected officials. And certainly it's going to affect people whether they want to work in the town or work in the school system. We can't change what happened in the past, but we can change is how we react in the future. In fact, we have to change. The endless Freedom of Information Act requests, the lawsuit, the investigations, the attorney fees, and now this recall politician is draining much-needed financial and personal resources away from the people who need it most, the students and the teachers. This level of discourse is not financially or academically sustainable. And I would say it's not even sustainable in a health standpoint, regardless of what side you're on. We must bring back civility and respectful dialogue. Equally important, which people said earlier, adults must put down their keyboards and stop the endless barrage of input, thoughts, and opinions that go out on social media. Because none of those inputs and none of those opinions have benefited any person or has made any situation better. If what we're doing is truly for kids, then we must comport ourselves in the manner in which we want to support our kids. We expect this from our children, and the adults, we have to expect the same standards from each other. Chelmsford High School, I'm a proud graduate of the Chelmsford High School system. This is my second time working here, and I love the system, and now I live here. And one of the unique aspects about Chelmsford is people come back. They come back to work in the system. They come back to live in this community. And we don't want that diminished because we're having trouble getting along. And working in a public setting in an organization this large, we're going to have these problems. We're going to have disagreements. That's part of it. Those are part of adaptive changes. It requires more dialogue, more meetings, and more conversation. And when those break down, we have more dialogue, more meetings, and conversation. Everyone here works too hard, and our heart's in the right places. We're just going to make our actions go in the right direction. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the committee at this time? All right, we shall move on. Ladies, what's new at the high school?
Well, so since last week, so last Thursday, the science team had a science meet in Weston, and they came first in Towers and third in Rocks and Minerals. And coming up on January 5th, we have a reverse college day. So this is where graduates come back and meet with current students about the experiences they've had during their first year of college. And on January 9th, we have an early release day. And we talked about last week how winter sports are starting up. So since then, the ping pong team will be starting up tomorrow. The wrestling team is undefeated, and overall we have over 460 kids participating in winter sports this season.
Boys basketball had one of their largest crowds at their home opener. Prom tickets were also raffled off at the game. Over break, boys basketball, girls basketball, and hockey all have tournaments. For the fall season, Chelmsford High School had 2 athletes of the year, Laura Latham, who was a freshman for girls swim, and Sal Lapoli Jr., who was a senior for football. We also had 14 Lowell Sun All-Stars, and the gym has been updated. We got new scoreboards, new shot clocks, new wall coverings, and this was donated by the class of 2016 CPAL, which is the Chelmsford Police Athletic League, and Chelmsford Youth Wrestling.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. He's back. Good news?
Okay, so we have 3 items for good news tonight. So first, we'd like to congratulate the following middle school students that have been accepted to the Massachusetts Music Education Association All-State Treble Choir. They will be joining singers from around the state to perform a concert in Boston this March. From the McCarthy Middle School, we have Sarah D., Megan H., Lindsay M., Rachel M., and from Parker Middle School, we have Jessica J., Shreya M., Nora N., and Delia S. So we're congratulating those kids. They're going to have a great time. Also, we'd like to congratulate our 2 middle school geography B winners. At Parker Middle School, it was Abby Sheck, V, and at McCarthy, it was Jazzy D. They'll be moving on to the next levels for the geography B. They had some really tough questions, and I was really proud of them. It was awesome. And last but not least, Chelmsford High School was named one of the top 25 Massachusetts schools to be named in the National Honor Roll for advanced placement. So this is, I think, our 4th year in a row being at the top 25, so congratulations, Chelmsford High School.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, I'd just like to add one comment. I want to make it clear that our committee's not trying to get back to being the great school system that we have been. The kids have been doing a great job while some of this other activity has been taking place. I'm fortunate enough to see some of the best in this last 6 or more of the kids coming to Rotary to talk to us. They're on TV on the Wednesday following our meetings. Please watch. They're unbelievable. One gentleman spent 8 weeks last summer in the Major Cancer Institute doing research down in New York City. Another spent 4 weeks taking classes and working at the aquarium down in the Cape. It goes on and on and on. We don't have to invent examples. They're all over the place, and people need to look for that. And as we move forward, give the kids and the teachers behind all of these activities. There's a teacher that's making it happen. And that's what we need to emphasize, and that's what we need to build on. My sermon for the night. All right. New business.
Sure, we have several items this evening on the agenda. The first one is just I'm passing along some recognition that 3 of our schools received. Gary Persichetti from the town sent over updated certificates from the Environmental Protection Agency for 3 of our schools, which qualified as superior energy performing schools. So Byram and Harrington Elementary Schools, and then the high school again was recognized for superior energy efficiency. And what that means is basically when you look at buildings that are a similar size to those facilities, those schools are using 35% less energy each year and contributing or generating 35% fewer greenhouse gas emissions to the environment. So again, those schools are doing a wonderful job of energy conservation. So just wanted to pass that recognition along. Second report of this evening is the personnel report for November of 2017. Again, not too much activity, but just like to point this out to you. Again, just it's a list of our new hires, resignations, retirements, and then any transfers that happened within the district. November was a relatively quiet month, but just to allow you to kind of track the comings and goings of staff in the district.
Question. The resignations, we have a physics teacher who left. We're replacing them, we're posting that job.
Yeah, maybe Linda can help
Yep.
on that.
Yes, so we do, I figured my voice a little too booming. So we were fortunate enough to find a physics teacher. She will be starting right after the break. She's actually a graduate of Chelmsford High School, so that's really helpful. And Mr. Morris, our new science coordinator, has been working closely with those classes currently to make sure that they've been staying on track. And we should be in good shape for physics.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions on the personnel report? Okay. The third report of this evening is actually a presentation. I'd like to invite Dr. Ellen Grandine from Middlesex Community College up, and I'm going to queue up a little presentation. Oh yeah, do you mind turning that on? One of the partnerships, new programs that we're trying to implement in the Chelmsford schools, which is going to tie into the high school, and Ellen's going to be coming to the high school after the first of the year to do a presentation with staff, and then there'll be some work that takes place over the course of the spring. One of the things that we'd like to really bring to Chelmsford High School is dual enrollment programming with our local colleges. And Ellen represents Middlesex Community College. I'm familiar with dual enrollment programming. When I worked in Lowell, it was a very significant offering at the high school. One of the challenges to offering dual enrollment programming in most schools, and Chelmsford High School is like that, is the schedule. So we have a kind of a block schedule that rotates. So dual enrollment programming in the past oftentimes used to have students would be freed up, say their first or last period of the day, and they would physically go, say, on campus to take a class. But it's very difficult with our schedule to be able to do that. What Middlesex offers us the opportunity to do is actually have our own teachers at Chelmsford High School be able to actually teach the regular courses that they're teaching. But we're able to, and again, Ellen, I don't want to steal your thunder
No, that's
here.
fine, that's fine, no,
But
please
what
do.
Ellen will end up doing is, we'll be able to get dual credit. So you'll be able to earn Chelmsford High School credit and also credit at Middlesex Community College, which is then applicable to other colleges across the state in New England, so that kids can actually earn, while they're in high school, college credits. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I don't want to steal everything in your presentation, so I'd like to introduce Ellen and have her walk it through us. But I think it's a very unique and exciting opportunity for Chelmsford High School, which hopefully will be starting as early as next fall. So we'll have Ellen do a presentation.
everyone.
And
Hey, Ellen.
Yeah, I'd be
Lock at the
happy
end.
to, and please ask questions as we go, but I've done this presentation a few times, and some of the things that come up are around the differences between dual enrollment credit and AP credit and those kinds of things. So I'm just going to go through that and then give you a little overview. And some of the things that you may not be aware of is how hard the state of Massachusetts is working to bring all of the community colleges and state universities and UMass system together to come to consensus around transfer articulation agreements, which is also something that I do at Middlesex Community College. And the reason for that is because if you've ever transferred or tried to transfer, if you've had your own children transfer, in the past, students would lose a lot of credit. And one of the goals of dual enrollment is to reduce student loan debt. And the state recognizing how much student loan debt students take on, a remedy to this is an early college program and dual enrollment opportunities for students. So right now, Middlesex has 14 partner high schools, and we have between 700 and 800 dual enrollment students, both on our campuses out in their high schools. So when we met to talk about the opportunity for Chelmsford, it's just a nice way to offer this to students and to have them, they also have a reduced tuition. So if you look at who qualifies, high school or homeschool students that have a 2.0 GPA or higher, and students have to have approval from their guidance counselors, their parents, and the principal. Sometimes, high schools set the GPA higher, and that's something we'll work with the high school on. It depends on the students and how you work with your students and how you determine who is eligible. As I said, a lot of folks ask about the difference between dual enrollment and advanced placement, or if it's an either or. And what I always recommend to schools is to do both. Some students love AP courses and the challenge of an AP exam, while others would prefer to take dual enrollment credit. The difference is that dual enrollment credit is Middlesex Community College credit. So the transfer transcript is an official transcript from the college. As you may know, sometimes advanced placement, depending on the college where the student is going, they'll only take a score of a 4 or 5, where a student that earns a 3 might have an A in a course, but they won't take the credit, where dual enrollment is a negotiated transfer. So there's some benefits to that. One of the things about dual enrollment is that students need to take the AccuPlacer in reading, writing, and math. And that is something that we do across the state for all students. And it's to make sure that their reading and writing and math skill is high enough for the text, is actually part of the reason we do that. Some schools also, we've had, for example, math departments at our college work with the math department at the high school, and they co-construct a final exam. And together they decide if the student meets the criteria for the class. Our goal is for the students to be successful, and so we need to make sure that students are prepared for those classes. It's an exciting thing for a lot of students, but it's also important for them to remember and for families to remember that it's an official transcript. So if you don't have a good grade, the only way to get that grade off your transcript is to take the class again. So we want students to be really well informed about the importance of the work that they do and the seriousness of the coursework. So as Dr. Lang mentioned, we have lots of students on campus taking dual enrollment courses, which is great for students who can get to and from campus. But more often than not, they don't have transportation or their schedule doesn't allow. So we embed the dual enrollment courses right in the regular school day, and students work with their faculty right on your campus. I think we can go, yeah. So again, some of the benefits are that students strengthen their reading, writing, core academic skills, and they can really demonstrate the rigor and ability. And so lots of colleges not only take the credit, but they also use it as an entrance criteria because students can demonstrate that they can do college level coursework. The other thing is that some students don't do this, but they should, and that is that students that are out in the high schools taking dual enrollment courses, they're MCC students to us. So they can take advantage of everything on campus. So we have plays and clubs and excellent library resources, computer labs, all kinds of things, and they are our students, so they're welcome on campus anytime. And again, as students earn transferable credit, often they reduce the cost of college. So we've had students come back. That's why I think it's interesting that you mentioned that you have students coming back for reverse day. And it's always interesting to hear how students have done once they've gone out and come back. And what students report to us is how often that dual enrollment credit helped them to think about a major. They were able to get better registration times for courses because they go in as sometimes as sophomores. Some go in with an associate's degree. So it opens the doors. They sometimes have preferential parking or better dorms. It really depends because they've earned some credit. So those are the things that we don't think about as much, but the students love. The other piece I just wanted to mention is in Massachusetts, the work that we've been doing across the system is mass transfer. And if you've heard anything about the ComCom, which is the Commonwealth Commitment, there's a commitment to students who do well that they'll have free or reduced tuition. They can go into the Commonwealth Honors Program. There's guarantees for enrollment in certain programs. So there's lots and lots of information on the Massachusetts Department of Higher Ed website, and I recommend people take a look at it. But again, students that are doing well and have those credits, there's a lot of benefits coming their way as well. And again, that was the mass transfer block. These are some of the benefits. There's no application fees, no application essay, automatic gen ed requirements are satisfied, the guaranteed of transfer credits, admission into some of the programs at if the student has a 2.5 or higher. And there's a 33% tuition waiver, although that now is actually even being reduced to a free tuition. The cost of dual enrollment in 2018 is $92 a credit. So it's $276 a course. So if you've made any tuition payments, you can imagine how much you can save if your students take those courses now. It's an amazing benefit too. And Middlesex has really worked very hard to keep that tuition down for students. And so we waive student service fees, testing fees. We take care of all the AccuPlacer costs. We waive the Mass Perg. And we also try to make sure that students, if they want to take the credits, they take the credits. We have payment plans. So it's a really nice benefit. The other thing that we've done at Middlesex is we've developed academic maps and pathways, and they're all on our website. And one of the things that's really helpful for students and guidance counselors is to take a look at the maps. And there's a map for every program. We have 78 programs. We also have certificates for students to really see the courses that they take and how they fit into a career pathway or a course of study. And I think a lot of college students go off and they say, like, why do I have to take English Comp 1? Or why U.S. history? Why are these things? That's not what I want to study. But I think what they'll see is that those are their first freshman year semester courses. They're their general education courses that they need to take as a solid foundation. And a lot of those courses are offered during dual enrollment. And that's where students who take them during their high school years go right into their field of study and can be really excited about the courses that they're taking. The other thing, benefit that sometimes isn't as evident is that students who take even 1 or 2 dual enrollment courses reduce the number of courses they need to take in their freshman year. So instead of taking 5 courses in that first semester, which can be a lot, they take 4. Or maybe for 2 semesters, maybe they take 4 courses. And what students tell us in that case is that sometimes that provides opportunity for them to get involved on campus or join clubs or have more time to manage the schedule as they learn to live on campus or in a dorm or something like that. So there's some other nice things about that. And again, we've been doing the career pathway alignment with all of our dual enrollment programs. Some schools have decided to select a field of study, so they may be very STEM focused. Others may be very arts focused. It really depends. There's no two high schools that do it in the same way. Here are our partner high schools here. And as you can see, we have everything from technical high schools to our traditional high schools. And that's, if you have any questions.
So these are all credits that our students can take at our high school.
Correct.
Optimally, and they will transfer to any college they choose to apply to?
Pretty much.
In the state or?
And privates. Yes,
Wow.
yeah. So what I usually recommend for students to do is if they have their hearts set on any Mass State school, college, university, those are negotiated as transfer credits. There's no question about those. Sometimes some of the private colleges, if the student takes, let's say, for example, a microeconomics course and they want to go into a business program, if it's a highly selective private college, they may take it as general education credit and still expect the course to be taken on their campus. But what I always say to students is if they have their heart set on a college, is to reach out and talk to admissions.
So in a situation where it's an AP class versus a dual credit, you know, I know more and more colleges are not accepting the AP class.
That's correct, yeah.
So this is already a given, they will accept your credits.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's an official transcript. How it's posted on the high school transcript is up to the high school, but at the MCC, when a student makes a transcript request, it just goes just like any other. It's not marked dual enrollment because the course is the course.
Yeah.
And I think what's also important is for students to think about that because like an AP course in some schools is also a dual enrollment course. And the student has an option. They may be taking it for AP credit, or they may have decided they're going to take it for dual enrollment credit. The way the course is vetted and approved through our department chairs and academic deans, the course is what it is. So, for example, we had a high school submit their U.S. history course and for approval, and it was their AP history. When our department chair, and it ran the full school year, so students have a lot of direct contact time with the faculty. When they submitted the syllabus for approval, our department chair and the history department looked at it, and it was the equivalent of U.S. History 1 and U.S. History 2 for the full school year. So the students actually earned 6 credits because the first half of the year was U.S. History 1, second was U.S. History 2. They did the same with English Comp, and it turned out it was the equivalent of English Comp 1 and English Comp 2. And then they submitted an intro to psych. So those students actually in that 1 year earned the 15 credits that they would in the first semester their freshman year.
Now, how about cost? It costs to take the AP exam. I assume there's some cost associated with the dual enrollment.
It's $92 a credit.
Okay.
So,
Which is about the cost of an AP exam.
yeah. And sometimes students do both. I mean, some students that really want to challenge themselves and they want to take the AP exam, they may still do that. And I always say, I mean, I don't think that there's any reason why they shouldn't if they really want to, other than it could be cost prohibitive. But I don't know, some students love tests and other students don't do as well on a test, you know? So it's something to ask the student to think about, and, you know, it's about a learning style, it's about, you know, how they want to go about it, but sometimes they do both.
The courses, if we're teaching them in our schools, our teachers are teaching them.
So the way that works is that the course is submitted first for approval, and it has to meet the same rigor as if it were being offered on our campus. The nice thing about offering them at the high schools sometimes is that because let's say it's over a full year, that's a much higher contact time in terms of the content. Once the course is vetted, meaning like the department chair has really taken a close look and has worked with the faculty at the high school, they make sure all of the concepts and all of the things that are there, although there's still a lot of academic freedom. And then the faculty member who would like to teach that course submits their resume. And they're looked at and reviewed and vetted just as if they were going to be an adjunct faculty member on campus. Sometimes our high school faculty are adjuncts on campus, and in a way that's nice because they teach on campus and in the high school, and it sort of keeps the course at exactly where it needs to be. And so then we go through that approval process. Once they're looked at and they are then assigned an MCC mentor, and that's usually the department chair. And the MCC mentor works with them, especially in their first semester, to just work together collegially. And what I find is we do a lot of professional development. We pay the high school teachers who then become our faculty to come. We give them stipends after school, that kind of thing, to work on curriculum. We find that faculty who teach the same curriculum love to be together. They love to talk about the content and work on things. We have lots of interesting professional development opportunities at the college. We have interesting guest speakers. We find the faculty really love working together. The other thing that's been nice is with so many high schools, the department chair may bring together all of the English faculty from all of the high schools who are teaching dual enrollment. And together, for example, we've been working on writing in the disciplines, so students become more adept at writing about the content area that they're interested in pursuing in their career. And so faculty love to share ideas and talk about that. The other thing that's nice for the faculty is that they automatically, we generated Blackboard Shell for them because that's the platform that we use. There's no mandate, they don't have to do that. But there are a lot of tools available to students, everything from e-tutoring to any of our resources and databases, research databases in our library. So a lot of the faculty love it because they can use that sort of to shape their course and organize their materials and that kind of thing.
That's what I was going to ask you in terms of professional development and all that else that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at a school like Northeastern University or BU or Harvard, you mean to tell me I'll be able to, in some instances, transfer the credits that I've received at your school to those schools?
Yes.
So it's evident. I think the value was
287.
270 something. So let me ask you a question. What is a class, in your experience, like at Northeastern University, my alma mater, at BU?
My alma mater.
Sorry to hear that. Or MIT, my alma mater. What would a typical class be for something like that? The cost of it, like just
It's ridiculous.
Could it be like $5,000, $6,000?
Gonna find out next year when you have to pay a tuition bill.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you
is $65,000 a year to
Right.
live there.
So, I mean, that comes out to like $7,000 a class.
Probably about, yeah.
$1,000.
So what this program is doing, if I understand, and they can only take a maximum of 3, or how many credits can they earn?
It really depends on how many are being offered at the high school. I mean, we've had students graduate with an associate's degree.
From high school.
From high school. They graduate from high school and
So we have a program that our children can save, and families, mom and dad and guardians, can save tens of thousands of dollars because we formed a relationship with you
right.
in order to save and receive credits and save dollars. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
How did this happen again? When did this?
No, I think the program's been, a lot of communities have utilized this program in the past, and it's a great resource for a couple levels for us. Number one, it really exposes our high school students to college-level content, and I know we've talked a lot about, like, say, AP equivalent classes, but I would really like to go a step beyond that, and we've talked to Linda and some of the staff to be even, the level?
Honors.
H2.
The kind of the
H,
honors
yeah.
level
Yep.
classes. So that, we're really kind of broadening who can be eligible for these classes, and it's more kind of college prep. Certainly the kids in AP classes,
They can
take
do
them,
that.
we may have some, but we really want to kind of hit that next level of students to kind of really kind of pique their interest. For us, it is going to be something that, we're going to start small and kind of grow. So, for us, it might originally begin with, say, like juniors and seniors. Might be like, say, so many different classes that we're offering. But I do think, within a number of years, depending on how faculty kind of sign on to this and they really enjoy it, it's possible. Kids, will leave high school with, 5 to, given the number of AP classes our kids take, 5 to 10 classes is not, out of the norm. And I think the nice thing is too, for under $300 per class, for a family to be able to take those classes and know if you go anywhere in the UMass system or anywhere in the really honestly most of the private schools that I've dealt with, they're taking these, and our kids are not even on college applications they're going to look and stand out more than a kid coming from just a regular high school that doesn't have any college exposure. I think it's a win-win for us. Financially for the families, and again, it's that tie into college while the kids are still in high school that I think is just a phenomenal opportunity.
And I think it is important. I use the AP because people ask about that a lot, but a lot of our partner high schools select certain college prep and honors courses. It really is about who the student is. So if they have a 2.0, so let's say, for example, a student who's in a college prep course but has a 3.0 and they take the AccuPlacer, that gives us a score for reading, writing, and math, and they test in. They're welcome. And we have 14-year-old, 13-year-old homeschool students on our campus every day. So if they meet the criteria, they are welcome to be in that class. I think the other thing that's nice about looking at other courses or students, depending on how your system is tiered in terms of college prep to honors to AP, is there are some students that kind of just pour it on a little later, and they develop a little later, and it doesn't mean that they can't get into those courses and earn college credit before they go. It does strengthen. Often, a lot of our private colleges that I work with, their transfer articulation agreements, they use it as an entrance criteria because they can see the student maybe they weren't as strong a student in their sophomore year, but as they started to progress and mature, academically they took on more and took some dual enrollment courses, and it completely changes the trajectory for their college acceptances. So it's a nice way to build some other options in for students as well.
First of all, I know you're president of your college. I want to thank your college. I want to thank you for saving our kids and our families thousands of dollars. And I want to thank, ladies before gentlemen, I want to thank you, Linda, and you, Dr. Lang, for bringing a program that didn't exist into our school system that will help us tremendously. So thank you very much. This is a big, big deal.
Exciting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So over the course of the next month, just to give you some ideas, over the course of the next month or so, we'll obviously continue meeting, taking a look at some of our course offerings as an initial offering, who this might really kind of relate to. In January, Ellen will come back. Thank you very much.
January 22nd, I'm meeting with faculty.
Okay, so in January, come back and do a presentation to the faculty to get them on board. And I really see this kind of rolling out this fall as we do some initial offerings. So I think it's very exciting. I do have to say, this is probably something that when I first came on board a couple of years ago, Al had really talked about. So I want to give him some credit for kind of pushing me to look into this. I was obviously familiar with dual enrollment programming and some of the benefits of it. And I think from being the high school principal and obviously knowing course-wise what our students can use, this was something that you kind of pushed me on, so I appreciate that. And I'm happy to bring that before you tonight because I do think it's going to be a great resource for our families. Huge cost savings potentially, and we're going to be able to track right out of the gate our kids that actually sign up for these classes, and we'll keep very good records on how many of our kids actually go through this programming, how much cost savings that we're going to be able to generate for their families, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity. So happy to bring it forward, and I'll provide a report this spring to let you know exactly how many courses we plan on rolling out in the fall.
Thank you, Jake.
I think a point that was mentioned, that you mentioned that was really important, but you just passed over very quickly, is the idea of the kids understanding better, why am I taking this course? Because those of us in education have seen a lot of kids like, here I am, but I don't want to be here. Why am I here? And I think anything along that line that's a big step, particularly for these kids that are, developing later, as you said.
Okay. The fourth item on the agenda this evening is the 2018-19 school year calendar. So we put this on the agenda at the last meeting, but we made a mistake.
I made a mistake.
Well, we're not going to blame anyone. It was Linda, but we're not going to blame anyone. We listed the April school vacation on the wrong week. So the April school vacation week always corresponds with the Monday holiday. So it's supposed to be the week of the 15th, not the week of the 22nd. So we've updated the April school vacation week holiday, and before we advertised this on the website and pushed it out, wanted the committee to revote the calendar so that we can actually send that communication out to families before this coming weekends. So we just recommend you approve the new revised calendar for the 2018-19 school year.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the new revised calendar for academic 2018-2019 year, please.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions or discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any negative vote or abstention? Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you. We'll get that on the website tomorrow. We'll send an email communication out to families just so that they can know. Fifth item on the agenda this evening is the school committee calendar from January through the summer. Excuse me. This is traditionally keeping with the first and third Tuesdays of the month. The only exception is in February and April. We moved because the third Tuesday falls on the vacation week, so we moved it to the fourth Tuesday for those 2 months. And then we made a note that we talked about this last year. In July, we're proposing not to schedule a formal meeting, to just keep the meeting in August. If there's any business that needs to be taken care of, we can obviously call a special meeting in July. But typically, the third Tuesday in July is too quick to have any of the financial reporting done at year-end close. So recommending you approve the school committee calendar so that this can be advertised on the website, and we can also give this information to Chelmsford TeleMedia so that they can record these meetings.
Mr. Chairman, school committee members, I'd like to make a small suggestion to this. I've missed one meeting in 3 years, and this would fall on something that I'd be out of town, which is January 2nd. I'd ask that the committee members and our superintendent would consider maybe eliminating January 2nd, a couple days after the New Year's. Can we live without it? Or get back on the 6th, and I'd very much not like to miss any meetings.
I think it's a schedule as a budget input for that one, though. So
Can we do it maybe?
I don't know if we can move it to the following week, or I don't know.
Yeah. What can we do? Because
Yeah.
I come back on the 6th, so I'd be back on really the 8th to go to work. And if you could maybe move things around, or I hate to say it, but I'd leave on the 27th, so I'd be happy to do it prior to Christmas, which is next week, so I don't know what to say. I'll throw anything out there. I'll come by myself by accident.
Well, we could move it to the following week, which would be Tuesday the 9th. I was going to have a meeting with some parents from the Council of Schools and PTOs to just kind of talk about budget in general and priorities, things along those lines. I personally have nothing Monday the 8th either. I know we traditionally do Tuesdays, but I don't know if a Monday night would work for you.
Either one.
Could you do Monday the 8th?
Yeah.
So I'm going to Disney, and I'm going to miss the 16th, and if you move it to the 8th, I'll miss both of them.
Oh. When do you go away?
I leave the 8th, and
You
I come
leave
back
the
the 16th. I could make the 16th, but yeah, of course I do. Life's about experience too.
Do we need the 2nd?
It's a budget meeting.
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah.
Yeah, what we were trying to do is get some community input on budgeting at the January meetings. So the meeting on the 16th as well is when we have our first school presentations coming, so that's already kind of in the works. The meeting on the 16th we really need to keep. I know you're coming back that day, but there is presentations already scheduled. I'm just wondering if on the meeting on the 2nd, I'm not opposed to moving that one. There's no presentation scheduled. It's just it was going to be an opportunity for people to come talk about budget and things. But are you gone that whole first week?
Isn't that a Wednesday?
That's
next year.
Oh, that's a whole year away.
That's 2019.
Oh, all right, that's right, okay.
That's
Oh,
19.
fine, I think we were talking, okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah, we're in 18.
Yeah, no, okay. It's this, I have a hard calendar for that.
Okay. So when were you away?
I leave the 27th, and I get back. I can be back for the 8th.
Oh.
But then you leave on the 6th.
I leave on the 8th, the morning of the 8th.
if we met on the 8th, well, you were gonna miss one meeting anyway?
No, he'll miss
Is that
both.
true?
No, he'll be back on the
I
I
16th.
can make I can make the 16th. I'm flying in the morning, so it's not like it's.
Be a little sleepy.
Is that okay with you, John? Because,
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
so if we move it to the 8th, then I'll be able to attend.
Yeah,
I'll be
yeah,
back.
that's
And then you'll miss the 8th, but you'll be back on the 16th.
Right.
Perfect.
That works for me.
Thanks,
Does that work
John.
for you, John?
Yeah, he's fine with me. Yeah.
Barbara, is the 8th okay for you?
Yes.
All right, so why don't we move Tuesday the 2nd to Monday the 8th, will be the school committee meeting. And then we'll still meet on Tuesday the 9th with you guys. That work?
With
Okay.
what guys?
Yeah.
Well, that was with them I was talking to.
Oh. And any conflict with any of the meetings, like selectmen or anything, doesn't matter.
Well,
Well, not on the second Tuesday of the month, shouldn't be bad.
But are we
On
meeting
the
on a
8th?
Monday?
Monday the 8th, is
Oh,
that
the
Sunday?
Monday?
Probably is.
Glenn, do you know if you
Yeah,
have
do
a
you know if
board
you-
meeting on Monday, the 8th?
January 2018?
Which is a Fri-
6 is a Saturday, it'd have to be the
It's the
the
Monday.
8th, would be the 8th.
They have one.
Can you not meet on the same nights as the
We
board?
can,
I
we can.
We can, but
Do
I
we
just
have
know.
to?
No problem.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have a problem?
No.
All right, let's go ahead and
Okay.
do Monday, the 8th.
Thank you, guys.
As the school committee meeting. I'll work with Debbie to have that amended. So if you wanted to approve the calendar as presented, amended, we'll get that posted to the website.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the calendar of events for the school committee meeting schedule as presented and amend the January 2nd meeting to January 8th, sir.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All committee members, thank you very much.
There wasn't any negative or abstention, was there?
No,
Okay.
Thank you.
Unanimous.
Sixth item on the agenda this evening is just a fiscal 18 budget update. For those of you who were able to come to the FinCom meeting we had about a week or so ago, this is just a copy of the same memo that I had in your packet that evening. We had some good news with regard to special education, excuse me, circuit breaker reimbursement. In our budget for the current fiscal 18, we had earmarked $2.5 million. That was what our estimated circuit breaker funding amount was going to be, and it actually came in from the state at $2.8 million. So we're $313,000 higher than we had anticipated. So that just helps kind of build that cushion, excuse me, with regard to our special ed reserve. At this point in time, too, as I'd reported at the FinCom meeting, we're still about $200,000 below our budgeted amount for tuition for this year. So, you know, technically, if everything plays out through the rest of the year, that could be a net $500,000 savings in special ed, which just helps us to kind of build that reserve fund. So just good news, wanted to pass that along. Again, that'll also help us when we start looking at fiscal 19 budgeting, because typically what we'd recommend doing is taking the fiscal 18 actual and utilizing that as the fiscal 19 budget amount. So that'll help us there as well.
Motion needed.
No motion needed. It's really just to give you some good news. Item number 7, Cherfield naming rights. So Joanna actually worked on this. The committee had gone out to bid a number of years back to allow people to bid on the signage at the McCarthy Middle School field, and then at the high school George Simonian, the field itself, not changing the stadium name. So this spring is actually when the contract with NRT is up. So they had a contract just for the McCarthy field. No one had bid the high school field. But we'd just like your authorization to go back out again. I didn't want to put, again, this is kind of a touchy RFP, so we didn't want to just go out on the street without you knowing about it. But we're basically looking to just kind of re-up for a 3-year contract with 2 option years for any individuals that might want to come forward and actually have their name be included in the signage on the McCarthy Middle School field, as well as the high school in the George Simonian Stadium field. And again, any of the revenue that's derived from those naming rights would go into the turf field fund and would help with the offset the cost of the turf fields. So just looking for your authorization to go ahead and issue the RFP. And again, just wanted to let you know what we were doing in case you heard we were out on the street looking for that.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the RFP for the naming rights of the turf fields.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. During discussion, I should have just mentioned something. I'm wondering if we could reach out to the various clubs or associations through Chelmsford, for example, the Business Association, And just maybe we could send them a letter or a heads up that this opportunity exists. I do know there are members of the Business Association that would be very, very interested in the naming rights. They're local organizations. Those are the people we should be targeting. So if we can send a letter out to the Business Association, maybe we can drum up some business with the kids in the turf fields.
Okay. Yeah, no, we certainly can do that. We'll advertise the RFP and we'll put some notices out. The other thing, in talking to Dan Hart, the athletic director, he has some ideas, because again, the turf field naming rights comes with a minimum $25,000 bid, which is a large amount of money for some of the smaller businesses in town. Ways of possibly coming up with some smaller signage options that we might even be able to put on either the sides or the back of scoreboards that would be displayed to the public, that we could actually advertise for smaller increments of money, excuse me, and kind of turn them over on almost like annual advertisements. So
smaller local businesses opposed to Coca-Cola?
Smaller
no, I'm
amounts.
just saying like smaller signs, so like you might be able to put up like, say, multiple signs on the same board at maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a piece, as opposed to a smaller company having to come up with 25,000. You know, the bigger dollar signs would obviously be the big ones on top of the boards. But he actually had a great idea. We haven't fully vetted it with the town as far as zoning goes. But you know, when you're coming down Richardson Road and you're coming out onto what's it?
Old Westwood.
The other cows.
The what?
Davis?
Davis.
And you're looking at McCarthy. I need Linda to help me with the stuff.
That's grand.
When you're looking at McCarthy, that scoreboard, you see the back side of it, but maybe there's a way to actually utilize that scoreboard already to hang some smaller signs, you know, because you've got a captive audience right there coming to the intersection, and maybe that's a group that we could actually do some marketing for and be able to generate some revenue for. So he's got some good ideas we're looking through.
I'll tell you what, because I coach football, I have an opportunity to stay with Dan Hart for several months. And I agree with you, Jay. I find him innovative, exciting to think about new ideas, and some of those ideas that you're describing, he's mentioned.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, he's got a handful of other ideas to generate revenue for the kids. So that's a great idea, and I'd like to move forward on it.
Okay. This evening, again, but this evening before you passed was just the turf field naming, so we'll get moving on that right after the holidays. Eighth item on the agenda this evening, I had just listed the school committee goals again. I wasn't able to poll between the last meeting to kind of figure out if we want to do a working session for this. I know different committee members have had some ideas about goals for the year, but didn't know how the committee wanted to go about scheduling a meeting to talk about goals. If you want to do it as a workshop format, or if anyone had any ideas, but I wanted to keep it on the agenda, so put it back on to talk about.
And I had sent something to Al, just some proposals, you know, as far as kind of redoing how we do our goals and kind of having a set of goals that go along with our strategic plan, and then a set of goals for ourselves as a committee. So, you know, I sent something to Al with just some proposals. I made some copies if people want copies of what I had sent to him, just to look at and just kind of look through.
Dennis put in a lot of time, and this is a big step to get us off
I'm not
point
shocked
zero.
I'm not shocked that Dennis King put a lot of time
So,
in.
the first part is just like throwing a bunch of ideas out there, and then the second part is my attempt, Linda, at some SMART goals. So taking some of them and framing them in a correct manner. I just picked some of the ones I thought we could do within this year. One happened to be trying to develop partnerships with local community colleges, so it actually works out pretty well as far as that's concerned. But just something to look at, just as kind of a jumping off point, so we can kind of get things firmed up. I mean, we're already at the end of December, so it'd be good framework to work with for the rest of the year.
I like the idea of a workshop, but I would ask that it be public allowed to attend, so transparency at all levels.
Yeah, and when I suggest a workshop, I was just meaning like posting, we'd have a regular meeting,
Right.
but we would just really dedicate a good chunk of the time to be like a
Terrific.
working session.
Terrific.
Dennis King, there's a lot of work here. Thank you very much, and as always, you're a tireless leader, and this is really important. Thank you, Dennis.
What would be really helpful, though, but would be really helpful is with you there, you'll know where you got everything from, because, you know, we can get information from several documents. And so this will really jumpstart us, I think. So
Yeah, well, you know what,
Day.
depending too what the agenda looks like on the 8th now, because we're moving things around, we might be able to put a little chunk of time into that. Okay. Last item on the agenda.
Just before we go ahead, we also need to get a date for policy, because I just gotta imagine most of you got a policy update from the association. Maybe I just got it.
In the mail.
But I mean, there's some significant change involved in fact, they're offering possible solutions to a couple of things, because it hasn't all been worked out, so, and we gotta go back on several things we've been sitting on too,
Sure.
so. As soon as we can, I know it's holiday season, but as soon as we can, we need to get back to that before we lose it
All
totally.
right, if you want, I can poll the members of the policy subcommittee and see if we can just schedule a time
That'd be great.
to get some updates.
Okay.
I haven't gotten anything from MASC, so if you did, if
that's
you want
right.
to forward them to us,
Yeah.
I'll make sure that it gets out to everyone.
Okay. Did anybody else get that? It's like a
I haven't
yellow.
looked at it.
Yeah, in the mail.
Yeah, okay.
Regular.
Look at it, because
Yeah.
it's different stuff. It's not all boring.
Is it an email or like a real mail?
No, it's a
Real
real
mail.
mail.
Real mail?
Yeah. I'll get it
It
to
still
you.
exists. So
I was gonna say.
Okay. No, I just didn't know if I missed something in the inbox.
Now, where are we with policy in the MASC? I know we talked about that.
We reconciled all of the policies to the best of our ability between, kind of what we had, what we reviewed, what was outstanding. And we've sent the entire binder, as we feel, it's in its complete fashion, to Mike Gilbert at MASC. So they're reviewing our existing policy binder, and basically, after the first of the year, are gonna kick out a schedule to us as to how they wanna go through section by section with the review. So I'm hoping sometime in January we won't have it done, but at least be able to have the schedule for you, and then map out between probably February and like next Christmas, December, a schedule for meetings. But they finally have the most up-to-date versions of the policies that we had. We're still pulling together other documentation that'll kind of go along with it, but we asked them after the holidays to be able to give us a schedule. As I was saying, the last thing I had on the agenda this evening was item number 9. It was just an approval of 2 field trip requests. These are both Chelmsford High School related. The first one is for the track teams to be able to attend the Dartmouth relays. It's an invitational meet, January 5th and 6th. I believe it's a Friday and a Saturday. They leave Friday and they stay overnight one night and come home on Saturday. And then the second one was a trip a year from now. This is April school vacation 2019, so like a whole year and a half away. And this is for Chelmsford High School students that would be interested in visiting the capitals of the British Isles. So that would include Dublin, Belfast, Edinburgh, and London. So there's an itinerary with the packet, and would recommend approval for that. I know the high school was eager to get approval for the capitals of the British Isle tour, because there's a date in January. If they lock in, they get more competitive pricing. So, yeah, no, it's a great opportunity for the kids, and I think, well worth the cost. So just recommending your approval on those two trips.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to, can I do them together or
Yeah,
separate?
you can do them together.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept 2 field trip application. One is for the track relay team at Dartmouth on January 5th and January 6th overnight. Excuse me. Second, in 2019, I make a motion that we accept the field trip application form for the class of 2019 CHS students to visit the British Isles that include Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, and an extension to France, as well as some other areas.
Second.
Any questions?
Is there a club or something sponsoring the high school trip, or is it,
It's usually Mrs. Cochran.
Yeah, it's Mrs. Cochran's group.
I don't know if there was a special club?
No, sometimes it's like the foreign language
Yeah, that's what I
teachers
was
might do
thinking,
that.
right, but there's obviously is
Yeah, no,
foreign language.
she's been sponsoring a different trip every year to different countries. So this just happens to be the trip they're looking at a year from now. It's all, I believe all high school kids who are interested.
Yeah.
Regardless of club.
Okay.
Can take it up.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any negative vote or abstention? Seeing none, unanimous. Okay, we have liaisons. Anyone want to chip in? I'd like to comment.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I was at the Byam this weekend at a basketball game, and I just noticed the remarkable work that our custodians have done, and I was wondering, I'm sure that carries over to all of our buildings, because I've not heard no complaints about, they've just done a seamless job, and it's been awesome. I'm wondering where we are with the contract?
Sure, so there's two things going on. Tom is doing a great job by him.
Yes. He was
is
there
great. No, I know
Saturday.
that, yeah. The custodians that we actually hired that are on our staff are really doing a great job of kind of protecting the buildings and caring for them and working with the vendors themselves. So we're currently in year 2 of a 3-year contract with 3 different cleaning companies. So they technically have the rest of this year, and then next year is their 3rd year, and that's when we'd be looking to go out to bid again. I have to say overall, even with the 3 different companies that we have on board, we're pretty happy as a district with their cleaning. From time to time, there are always different issues with staff transitions and whatnot, but they've been pretty responsive to any critiques or criticisms that we have. And I think a key to the whole thing is really having our own staff be the point person during the day. They come in at night and they can see what was done or not done the night before, and they're that intermediary to get work done.
But even the night, I mean, I go to a lot of meetings in McCarthy, and they're very visible. They're not our day, but they're very visible, and they're very friendly. And
night cleaners.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
no, they're
focused
really
about
doing
what
a
they're
good job.
doing.
Yep. No, they are. They're doing a good job, but everyone is in the middle of year 2 of a 3-year contract. So we've got it still a whole other year after this.
I just had a quick question. So MSBA funding, which we didn't make it in, when are we going to have a new agenda item to discuss the plan going forward? Because we're going to reapply again, I imagine.
Yeah, so what'll end up at, we just got notified last week that we're not gonna get invited, this year into the process. I'm gonna take Christmas week to kind of read through the application again, reach out to the MSBA and actually just talk to them and see if I can get any criticism or critiques of the application. I think a lot of it came down to the schools that actually got accepted in were in much needier shape, than we were, you know, building-wise physically. But, I would anticipate seeing something probably at the February, probably the first meeting in February, school committee meeting. I just need some time to be able to review the application, give you a write-up that says, you know, I think we should resubmit, here's areas I'd like to tweak in the application, and then ultimately it'll come back before the school committee for approval. It would go back to the Board of Selectmen again for approval, and then it would get resubmitted in April. So it's sometime mid-April. I don't think the date is actually out yet, when we'd have to do a resubmission.
What's the approximate cost to reapply?
This time around, it's really just gonna be my time or our time. We're not gonna need to hire a consultant to
Right.
go out and do anything.
Is there an application fee?
No, there's no application
Okay.
fee. It's just really our own time, just
Okay.
modifying the application and then getting the various boards. So there's no financial cost, just staff time in tweaking it.
And I just went liaison with it, ended up going to Harrington, PTO, and very good meeting, very productive meeting, great set of parents. They understand the complexity of situations going on there, and I just wanted to echo what Maria had said earlier in terms of they just want to know policies. They just want to be informed in that regard. They don't want to know details. Just like what is the policy? When certain things happen, and just to stay informed was the main message they got across. So.
Yeah, one of the and you would kind of relay that to me as well. And I mean, one of the takeaways from the, the whole kind of incident that happened, or even like some of the fallout from the last meeting. I mean, as hard as it is, I really do like to hear what people, either think are going well in the district or needs work. But one of the takeaways was around communication in particular, or even, say, at the elementary school level. I know I had some conversations with parents about this. How in the schools do we react to certain situations? What does, say, a hard lockdown or a soft lockdown in a building look like? What are circumstances when a classroom would be, evacuated? And it sounds, it's a big word, but like what actually goes along with that? And I think sometimes, I'll say I take for granted, or other people may take for granted that, people know what's involved with those kind of routine things that happen in schools. But for new parents, and particularly parents at the elementary school level, well, they don't know. And if they're relying on their 6, 7, or 8-year-old child to come home and tell them, what's a critter in here, what's happening, or what is an evacuation? It's scary, and I'm sure it just it's something that we need to do a better job on, and it's something that we can work on. Almost putting together some materials for parents, or some guides, or some videos that actually kind of show what these different kind of school events are. So that was good feedback, good criticism on us, something that we certainly can work on. We'll convene some teams at the elementary level in particular to look on that, because I think that's where a lot of these questions come from. And like I said, it was good feedback, and we're always open to that.
I just wanted to mention that the music department has performed at Rotary Christmas luncheon, holiday luncheon. And this year was exceptional. It's, you know, you hear this all the time, but you can't hear it enough at the same. They brought 4 violinists that performed first, and I can't tell you the piece, but it was very complicated, and they were outstanding, followed up by the crescendos and then the Thursdays. And they're, you know, they've been out a lot. They've gotten a lot of credit, and they deserve all. And then it closed with the pit orchestra doing, well, the jazz band. They're very close, well up, I guess, doing 2 pieces from the musical with 2 people singing for the second one. And so, you know, it's just amazing the quality. We've always been outstanding in music. The quality, just, I can't imagine it getting much better because, well, I commended them before, but the pit orchestra in the musical, you could have been in Boston as far as I'm concerned. The quality is just outstanding. And so I know it's been out there a lot, how well the music program's doing, but it just gets, you know, reaffirmed every chance you have to hear them. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn unless somebody else has something else.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous? Thank you.
Good holiday.
Seriously, have a good one.